We're all here. So maybe there's someone else. And then please doing good. Let's see. Right. Okay, right. We're ready. Sorry, can someone shut the door? I forgot to shut. Thank you, Gary. Are we going live? We're live now. Okay. Okay. Right. Welcome to the Planning Committee on Wednesday, 20th July. We have 4 items on the agenda this evening. And talking of the agenda, have we got any apologies for absence or substitutions? We do have a substitution.
Thank you, Chair. So we've received apologies from Councillor Mahmood and we've got Councillor Padder as his substitute. Thank you.
Okay, right. Urgent matters. I know of no urgent matters. Declarations of interest. I know of no declarations of interest tonight. No? Right, okay. Any matters to be considered in private? Nope. Right. Minutes of the last meeting. Are those a true record? Oh, we don't have any. There's none on this occasion. All right, okay. Site visit attendance. So let me just go through councillors that I believe were there. Just shout if you, I was there. Councillor Brett, Councillor Bustill, Councillor Gallant, Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Coley, and that was it, I think. Oh, and Councillor Padder. Right, okay. So without further ado, we move on to the first one. Oh, sorry, I should tell you what the agenda is in terms of the running order tonight. I'm just changing it slightly. So it will be Gold's Gym followed by Manhattan Business Park because we've got speakers on those and councillors speaking on those. Then we'll drop to 1315 the Green, Southall, because we've got a speaker on that. And then we'll go to Portrush Court after that. So I'll say it each time as we get there. So I hope that's clear to everyone. So Gold's Gym. Okay, so would you like to introduce this? Where is he? Joel.
Good evening. Item number 1 on the agenda this evening is the redevelopment of the Gold's Gym site in Hanwell to provide extensions that would create a Part 4, Part 5 and Part 9 story building that would both retain the existing gym in a modified form, create a retail unit to the frontage of the site and accommodate 43 residential units within the scheme. The design approach to the scheme draws parallels to the consented scheme on the adjoining site, which comprises a Part 4 and Part 9 story development. The application site is located within the Hanwell District Centre, which the London Plan identifies as areas that should seek to optimise individual sites to accommodate mixed-use developments comprising residential uses. The site is considered appropriate for the type of development proposed, as the site presents a highly sustainable location that is well connected to existing public transport nodes and local services and amenities within Hanwell. Whilst it is noted the proposed height of the development results in the change to the prevailing heights within the area as existing, the proposal should also be viewed in the context of the consented scheme on the adjacent site, and the proposal represents a coherent and practical extension of the emerging form of development. The design imagery takes account of the massing, bulk and height of its neighbouring consented scheme and is presently presented accurately in many of the imagery provided by within the application documents. The existing building has limited architectural merit that does not provide any significant contribution to the character of the area or any clear design link with the established built form. The proposal would improve the site's engagement with the street, establishing more glazing within the front elevation and active frontages to contribute better to the public realm and the vibrancy of the district centre. It is noted that the site is surrounded by a number of heritage assets, and the committee report provides a clear assessment on the impacts of the proposal on existing heritage assets, including the locally listed church to the east, the statutory listed St. Melita's Church, as well as 2 conservation areas nearby. Based on this assessment, the development would constitute less than substantial harm to heritage assets, and in accordance with the requirements of the NPPF, the public benefits of the proposal are demonstrable and would significantly outweigh any harm. Significant concern was raised through the consultation period on the impact of the proposed development of future residents being able to look into the internal church areas. The concern did not specify which specific roof lights are of concern, but for completeness, assessment has been made with respect to the concern of the roof lights on the community use part of the building, as well as the windows within the roof slope of the main church. The roof lights of the church hall are raised. Sorry, I've just lost my place. And given the angle to which any resident would look at the adjacent site, there would be no direct view into the internal space of the church hall. Similarly, whilst the residents would have views into the windows of the roof slope of the church, the only view would be to the internal ceiling, and therefore the proposal raises no concern in this regard. It should be noted that the deck facing the church would be used for access only, with private amenity spaces for these flats facing the Lidl car park. The proposal would provide for 35% affordable housing within the scheme, with a compliant 60-40 tenure split in favour of London affordable rent over London living rent. Proposal for affordable housing would therefore be wholly compliant with London Plan and Ealing Council planning policy with respect to affordable housing and provide genuinely affordable homes within a highly connected and sustainable part of the borough, close to local amenities and services. The proposal would provide for a total of 43 homes that would comprise 21 bedroom flats and 23 two-bedroom flats. Many of the flats proposed, including within the affordable housing provision, would be two-bedroom, four-person flats that provide larger homes that could accommodate families. Proposed residential accommodation will be compliant with the London Plan and Ealing Council criteria with respect to internal living spaces, private amenity spaces, and communal amenity spaces. A full assessment has been provided on the impact of the residential properties within the vicinity of the site, with the conclusion that proposal would not have a detrimental impact on the living conditions of any surrounding residents. The report has also focused on the amenity of the users of the church adjacent to the site with respect to loss of light to the roof lights, noise impact and security concerns, as well as loss of light to the presbytery at the back of the church. Appropriate conditions have been recommended with respect to acoustic and with respect to the acoustic environment and local air quality. Overall, the design has been considered against the emerging character of the area and gives strong regard to the impact of the proposal on heritage assets. The site provides full optimization of the site to create a mixed-use development within the Hanwell District Centre that is well located to public transport and local services and amenities. Proposal presents a good mix of quality residential spaces that would refurbish the existing gym, which is also an important community facility with approximately 5,000 members. It is considered the proposal represents a policy compliance scheme and that it is the council officer's view there would be no planning grounds that would warrant a refusal of this application. As such, it is recommended the application be approved subject to conditions in Section 106 legal agreement. I would also draw the committee's attention to the briefing note, which amends the site map and is included within the committee documents. It also addresses concerns of some objectors with respect to the validity of the adjoining consented scheme and the weight that has been attributed to the assessment of this application within the committee report. An additional objection is also provided in the form of from a representative of the adjacent church. The briefing note also amends the front elevation diagram of the consented scheme on the adjoining site. I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Okay, we'll get to questions. So on this one, we have an objector, Maggie Jones. You can come up, Maggie. What I didn't do, while Maggie's coming up, what I didn't do was ask for declarations of interest. I skipped over that I was going through the agenda. And I should say that I am technically a parishioner of St. Joseph's Church, but I don't think I have any interest or I have had no interest. You can speak from any place you like, as long as we can hear you. So yes, I am, and I don't think I've got any pecuniary interest or any interest in this. Councillor Bratt.
I'm also a parishioner of the church as well, although I haven't been for quite some time.
It's not confession, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for 20 Hail Mary.
I have had previous acquaintances with the owner, but I have no pecuniary interest in this application, nor have I spoken to the owner or developer about this application.
Okay, thank you. I was conscious I hadn't done that. Sorry. Maggie, sorry I interrupted you. As long as that mic's working.
Hello, yes. I'm speaking on my own behalf, a resident of Hanwell and a parishioner of the Our Lady in St. Joseph's, and Mr. Peter Hughes, who and his parents have lived in the locality for over 50 years in Deans Road and Homefield, which are immediately behind the gym. The proposal will have significantly greater impact on the character and appearance of the Uxbridge Road than the Marshall site development. Each application must be considered on its merits and in its particular context. The Marshall site precedent points must be assessed against the very different context of the current application. The differences are so significant as to warrant refusal. These are its height, its relationship to the church and presbytery, and the intrusion of the outrigger into the character of the residential area. It introduces a bulky and visually intrusive element into the street scene. It will be higher than the 9-story development on the Marshall site because of the 2-story gym is higher and there's a slab podium. It also sits forward of the Marshall Street Tower. It is only set back 3 meters from the frontage compared with 11 meters with the Marshall Street. It is, its location is contrary to the council's tall buildings policy and reinforces its visual intrusion in the reinforcing its visual intrusion into the street. The Gold's Gym development incorporates a 5-story element, thus increasing the overall bulk and massing of the development. Overall, it's a significantly greater visual impact in terms of its scale, height, bulk, and massing on the character and appearance of the Uxbridge Road, and should be refused for this reason. It also, I would stress, it has a very significant relationship to the church and the presbytery, with the 4- and 5-story outrigger immediately adjoining the site. The presbytery is a 2-story building to the rear of the church and the home of 2 priests. It is the nearest residential development to the site, which was and has been occupied on a full-time basis since the 1960s, contrary to the assessment statements in the committee report. The first floor bedrooms and balcony provide the only private amenity space for the priests, because they have to have the shared accommodation. It results in a loss of daylight, sunlight, and privacy, created an overbearing, intrusive development. The impact on the outrigger it's significantly different. It intrudes into the residential area. It's beyond the boundaries on the Uxbridge Road frontage, including the Marshall site. It's significantly more visually intrusive to the residential area
3 minutes, Maggie.
and the existing 2-story gym. Is that the end?
Yes, sorry, I have to cut you off, as I
Right.
will cut every other person. I think you've got some memories of that in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have for the applicant, Keith Horn. It's Keith here, right. Maggie, would you like to turn your mic off, please?
Is this working?
It is now.
It
There was a
is?
bit of a feedback, sorry.
Okay.
So again, you've got 3 minutes and we'll tell you when the 30 seconds is left. And I will stop you at 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, Keith.
The Senior Planning Officer has provided you with a very balanced, comprehensive 50-page report on the merits and the issues of the scheme and recommended approval. In 3 minutes, I will be very brief. Hanwell is a hidden treasure in West London with limited opportunities to create new, much needed residential accommodation for the area. This scheme provides one such opportunity. The client aspires to follow the Council and London Plan 21 directive to optimise existing sites by retaining and upgrading the existing Gold's Gym and providing accommodation over. The scheme satisfies the requirements of the London Plan to provide high quality accommodation, including 35% affordable units, meet space standards and address climate change and transport issues, and satisfy or exceed the latest building regulations and provide significant financial contributions which benefit the local community. The design was developed over an extended period to arrive at a solution of a 4-story podium block matching the scale of the buildings opposite in Uxbridge Road and addressing the perceived weakness of the current main eastern entry into Hanwell. We were encouraged in our discussion with officers to adopt the positive merits of the approved Marshall scheme, maintaining a sympathetic massing, scale and palette of materials, but retaining a distinctive character. And we have refined the proposed design solution through several pre-app stages. The Marshall scheme with the 4-story podium and setback higher element was described by the inspector as a high-quality architectural solution, providing scale material improvements to the streetscape, improving the eastern approach to Hanwell, and with no significant impact on the setting of the local conservation area or the listed St. Mellitus Church, making a positive contribution to the character of the existing built area. The south wing of the Gold's Gym, the outrigger, has been the subject of much debate, including several changes to the scheme to address the relationship with the existing church. comments received and perceived concerns, including modified setbacks, height reduction, screening, and landscape alterations. The client has made several approaches to the church, but they would not cooperate, and they have deliberately not engaged in detailed discussions to date. But the client
30
remains open
seconds.
to meet and address detailed concerns. Although there have been many comments about the scheme by local interest groups, the planning officer and Heritage Unlimited have concluded the final proposal creates no significant detrimental impact on the conservation area, the listed church, or the neighboring church. I would say that the height that the lady said was higher than it has purposely not been, it is not higher than,
3 minutes.
not higher at all.
Thank you very
The
much.
benefits of providing new
Thank you,
quality
Keith.
housing and improvements to the
Keith.
streetscape.
3 minutes are up.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
I have to stop you because I have
That's
to be
all right.
fair to both
That's
sides, and I
fine.
stopped Maggie doing it as well.
Thank you.
So, unfortunately, that's the rules of the game. Sorry, I just wanted to ask, is the fan noise affecting anyone? Can everyone hear okay? It's not cold up here, I can tell you. Okay, if we are suffering from not hearing, please let me know. Can you hear at the moment, Dee? Is that okay? Right, okay, because I'll have to turn them off because we need to know, everyone in the committee has to hear the same thing. Okay, right. Okay, we have local ward councillor, Councillor Gordon, who I shall remind has up to 5 minutes. Doesn't have to use all 5 minutes, as I remind every councillor that speaks. Yoel, I can see you on the screen.
Yeah.
Away you go.
Can you hear me? Can you? Thank you, Chair. As you have heard from Margaret Jones, there are a significant number of technical planning weaknesses in this application, which she has outlined clearly. You will be aware that there are over 400 objections to this application, many from the parishioners of Our Lady in St Joseph's Church next door to the proposed development, but also from residents in Deans Road, Montague Avenue, and the other surrounding streets. I objected to this application when it first came out in November, and in agreement with my fellow Hanwell Broadway councillors, wish to speak in support of residents and the church in opposition to this application. I consider that a 9-storey building on this site is overdevelopment, and it will impact very negatively on the setting of the neighbouring Grade 2 listed St Mellitus Church and the locally listed Our Lady and St Joseph's Church. The adjacent church hall, which relies on roof lights for lighting of its interior, would also be overshadowed. A 9-storey building will also tower over the 2-storey houses to the south, including those of Montague Avenue and Deans Road. Members of the committee will have seen the properties at the back of the unkept gym garage during the site visit on Saturday, and will appreciate how this will impact on these small family homes. The application and the report uses the Marshall development as precedent, but that is situated to the west of Gold's Gym and hence has no impact on the view. The Marshall development was rejected by Planning Committee over 4 years ago, and that decision was overturned by the Planning Inspectorate. However, it remains an inappropriate and unpopular development. The Gold's Gym application must be seen in its own context. To date, there are no works taking place on the Marshall development, and it remains to be seen if these will ever occur. There are, however, a significant number of other developments taking place within less than half a mile of this site. The old Peugeot garage on the Oxbridge Road and the huge Wicks Hanwell Square development will bring several hundred new flats to an already overcrowded area with the resultant pressures on local services. There's also Elthorne Works about a mile away as well. So there are hundreds and hundreds of new flats coming to Hanwell, which is not quite what was said by the developer. To crowbar another 43 very small non-family flats in Hanwell Broadway will exacerbate pressures on all the local resources. I do not oppose development with some residential on this site. The current Gold's Gym site is unattractive and adds nothing to the streetscape. However, this seems to be a clear case of overdevelopment, and critically, it's far too high for this location. Any new proposed building ought to be appropriate in size and density for the location and be sensitive to the neighbouring properties to both the east, i.e. the church, and to the south, the residents of Montague Deans and so on. This application fails to meet these basic criteria. It is, in my opinion, a poor application, which I would urge members of the committee to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon, and it was well within 5 minutes. applaud you for that.
You're welcome.
Right, okay, so it's open to the committee to ask questions. Please, I just want to, make sure you get all your questions in all at once. Let me just write your names down while you've got your hands up. I'll do it this way. Councillor Rice, Councillor Martin, Councillor Kelly, did you? Councillor Anand at the moment. Right, okay. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and get close up so you can hear. Right, so just a matter of clarification, please. First of all, on page 10, it says that the site's got a PTAL rating of 5, but on page 12, it says it's got a PTAL rating of 4. Can I please clarify which is the correct rating? And also, sorry, I'm banging here, sorry, on there. So, and also about the play space. So I'm just a little bit concerned about the play space that's being provided for young children. It's within a communal garden on the 4th floor. And I think it is important that we do make sure there's a stimulating environment within play space. So can I just clarify as to how that is actually envisaged? I know I've just seen some dreadful examples of play space recently where sometimes you may even get like a kind of a springing rocker, which is just actually facing a brick wall. And I can imagine in order for children to play safely on the 4th floor, I can imagine there probably would be pretty high up walls or some kind of pretty high up fencing in order to keep them safe. So as long as it's actually got somewhere to stimulating and a bit of openness for the children to play nicely. Thank you.
We'll take the questions, Joel, but I also come back to the objector as well, please. Right, Councillor Martin.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me? All right. Yeah. No? Is that any better? Yeah, okay. So I had a couple of questions. One of them was, I'm just curious about the durability of steel and how long that sort of rigging is going to look good. Because it is in a conservation area and some of those buildings have been there for a very, very long time. And my understanding is the steel might not last that long and it could start to rust and that might look pretty awful. So I'd quite like to know what the developer or the officer thinks about that. And my second question is on some of the photographs, that outrigger did look like it was coming very close to the church, inarguably in a way that might be seen as overbearing, but that may be an impression that I've got that's not right. So I'd like a little bit of clarity about that as well, please.
Yeah, I asked about that outrigger, but I'll let Joel come back on. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, Joel, you talked about the church hall, looking into the church hall and the church. Could you just confirm what you meant? Do you mean the church or do you mean the annex social club? Because they're two very different buildings and the social club was built afterwards. To just clarify what you mean by that, please, when it came to lights in the roof.
Do you mean looking into? Is that what
yes, yeah,
right,
yeah.
Got it. Councillor Anand.
Thank you, Chair. Just need clarification on the children's play area. It's been calculated in the report that 13.3 square meters per child, and there's a shortfall, and there's a calculation done for that shortfall. I need to understand, or please explain the calculation, how it's derived at 6,000, and what are the alternative spaces nearby where children can actually, and how can actually have the amenity space, and how the split is made between the 0 to 4-year-olds and the 5 to 11-year-olds. Thank you.
No other questions? Councillor Coley.
Thank you, Chair. While I do welcome this mixed development, I have a question that was no consideration given to include some 3-bedroom units, because I would have welcomed a better mix of flat sizes. Thank you.
Right. Okay. No one else indicating for questions. Joel, if you'd like to address those and address the objectors' points, please, as well.
Sure. So in response to Ms. Jones and her comments, so effectively, as the report outlines, the proposal has been assessed against the tall buildings policy of the London Plan, which included a lot of visual impact assessment on long range, short range, and intermediate views. So it's come to the view under that policy. I mean, the comment was made that doesn't comply with that policy, and it technically does comply with that policy because the assessment has been made in that regard. The setback from the front was mentioned as being 3 meters, but that should also be seen in the context that the building itself is set back approximately 6.5 meters from the frontage of the site. So although that the building on the Marshall site is set back approximately 10.5 meters, this building is set back approximately 9.5, 10 meters. So there's a very small differential between the front building lines there. I mean, the comments in respect to the impact on the presbytery, I think that has been addressed within the report. It acknowledges that there are some impacts on the bedrooms, but the living, kitchen, dining areas are compliant with BRE guidance. And I didn't quite understand the comment in regards to the development projecting beyond boundaries, but the development itself is wholly contained within the application site. In response to Councillor Gordon's comments,
Joel, sorry, Joel, in speech, it says it will be higher than adjoining development. Is that correct?
in the speech,
Sorry, yeah, I've got it. I've got the written speech here.
yes,
So
that's incorrect. The highest part of the building will match the highest part of the Marshall site. On Councillor Gordon's comments, he made the point initially that there were 400 objections on the scheme, but we shouldn't discount there was also an equal amount of support for the scheme received during the consultation period within sort of around about equal number, with 91 letters of support and 297 signatures of support as well. I think that the concept of overdevelopment and the impact on the character of the area, I think that that's been sort of addressed multiple times, and that's the council officer's view in that respect. The proposal will cause some overshadowing of the neighbouring church, which was mentioned within the report. However, the church is located directly to the east, and therefore the sun arc effectively shows that there'll be no impacts at certain hours, but it does recognise there will be some impacts. It should also be acknowledged that although there is overshadowing, that doesn't mean it's pitch black. There is still light coming. Pressure on local services. I mean, the application involves financial contributions to mitigate this, of course, as is the case with most applications. And a comment was made that the proposal constitutes very small flats. A number of the flats actually exceed their minimum standards under the London Plan. Councillor Rice, I think what you're referring to is on one page it says PTAL 5 and one page it says PTAL 4. So I think the incorrect statement has come from TfL in that regard. They have said it's PTAL 5. It's actually PTAL 4. But the comments of TfL were effectively put into the report verbatim. The children's play space. So at this stage, what we're looking for is where children's play space will be located. As part of conditions, which typically comes through in landscaping conditions, we're going to need to see the type of children's play space that will be proposed within that area, and that should accord with the child yield and the child yield split that is identified by the GLA calculator. So we will receive more details on that, and it will be ensured that effectively the type of equipment that is proposed those areas isn't a risk of going over the edge or anything like that. Councillor Martin, the durability of the steel, it's probably not something that I can technically answer. I don't know if I don't want to lie my way through that question because I just simply don't know. But obviously the materials will need to be high quality, and you know they have been assessed at this stage to be connecting the design of the building to the surrounding brickwork of the area. The photographs of the outrigger. So I have had that question before. So I think it's a matter of perspective, because when you look at the front of the site boundary doesn't go straight back. It goes at an angle, and therefore the bit you're sort of seeing at the side there where it goes to the side is the sort of perspective of the outrigger going backwards. if that outrigger was going back straight, you wouldn't see that within that front elevation. It's just the angle of the shared boundary with the church. So Councillor Kelly, confirmation of what I was sort of saying about where it's looking into. So it's looking in the church windows that are on the roof. It's looking into there, but when you're looking into that space, you're just looking at the ceiling of the church internally. You're not looking down at people using the church. And the comments in regards to the roof lights on the church hall adjacent to the site, closest to the site, that was what those sort of images within the presentation you would have seen, that as you're looking down, those roof lights are raised, and therefore when you're looking down at an angle, you're not going to be able to look directly into that church hall.
The church hall, he means, is the social club, same thing. Put your mic on if you're going to speak, sorry.
There's the windows to the church, which are slanted, and then it's like a perspex type roof in the church hall. Can we so when you say church hall, you don't mean the church, you mean the social
Correct.
centre.
Yes.
He means, yes, he does.
So it's a social centre.
Yes.
Okay, that's the bit I want a clarification on. Thank you.
Yes, that if it's helpful, Joel could bring up the presentation again, which he included a slide to help you to understand where the windows were. And
I call it the social centre. He called it the church hall. I'm happy. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Nan, the children's play area, the shortfall. So it often comes into these sort of applications where that calculation comes from quite a very technical calculator that's available within our landscaping team. And it sort of calculates the shortfall, the demand, and then what council would reasonably expect to provide that off-site. Now, where that would be located would be the decision of our parks team and where that goes into. But what we need to look at is there will be the child yield of this development is approximately 13 children, and therefore the space that's provided is probably suited to that, but the shortfall is based off policy, and then the shortfall is given a financial amount based off a well-established calculator that we use for most applications, and that is given to our Parks Department to determine where is most appropriate to use it. And sorry, the last comment.
Councillor Coley about 3 bedrooms.
Councillor Colley, yeah, I mean, at pre-application stage, we did advise the applicant to consider 3-bedroom apartments, flats within this development. Now, obviously, that's a decision of the applicant to make. But what I would add is the proposal includes a number of 2-bedroom, 4-person flats. And our housing team regard them as large flats of 2 double rooms that can accommodate small families. So it's achieving a similar outcome that we are having these larger flats within the development.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Okay, so questions open for debate. Who wants to? Oh, I don't see a rush of hands to debate here. Councillor Brett.
Yeah, this development, I'm kind of tending to agree with Councillor Joel Gordon in the sense that this does need to be taken into context on its own merits, and not what may or may not have been given planning permission next to the adjacent site. When you look at that corner, all of the buildings are quite low. You've got 2 churches, you've got family home, or family-sized home, 2 stories, and then you've got a small development, which is, I think, 3 or 4 stories maximum. So from that point of view, I do feel like it's an overdevelopment in that area. My concern on the site visit, and my concern still tonight, and I'm not sure if it has actually been addressed, is the family homes in the rows on Deans and Montague behind. That is a concern. Those homes have been established for a long time. So from that point of view, that's another issue for me. And also, it is disappointing that we don't have more multi-use apartments. So to go back to that comment about larger larger flats. I think there is a need for more family homes in Hanwell. We've got a lot of 1 and 2 bedroom flats being built already. So that for me is another kind of red flag for this development. And yeah, so that's my thoughts.
Councillor Kelly, you indicated.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Gordon and Ms Jones for their representation. Obviously, I know this site for some years and quite understand why the front was big, because timber lorries used to go in, so it's a big site. You know, the reason I wanted clarity about the church hall was, in a sense, it's a used space, but only at particular times. It's used in the evenings, during the day for a couple of, I'm not going to say a couple of hours because I don't know its usage, but people don't live there. People don't live at the front. People don't live in the church. Obviously, the ordained priests live in the back. And I look at the visual impact of what's there now and find it quite horrifying that hadn't been improved back when it was converted. So on balance, that there's one resident living at the back, he may lose some space. I quite like the visual impact. I'm quite pleased that the dimensions exceed the London plan. You know, so it's a tight space, but it's a high street that people want to live on. So I'm minded to vote for this application.
Okay, Councillor Coley and then Councillor Anand.
As I originally said, I actually quite welcome this development. Obviously, it's a mixed development, so we're keeping the gym and the swimming pool there. I'm also mindful that the adjacent properties have been given planning permission up to 9 stories. My only concern, and I agree with Councillor Brett here, that even though the applicant was advised to have some 3-bedroom units, I strongly feel that the location is good and it would have been ideal, at least, you know, to have about 10 to 15% of 3-bedroom units. The fact that I don't see any 3-bedroom units gives me some concern. But I think the overall development, the design is good. I think it will enhance the outlook over there. And it's a good site because it's got a good PTEL rating. I'm also concerned about the amenity space, or what amenity space is around the site for the residents. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Anand.
Thank you, Chair. My concern, I do actually welcome this development. It's going to enhance the area, although I take in account of Councillor Gordon's comments as well, and comments made already about overshadowing. It will be an improvement to what it is already. However, I am very much concerned about the calculations that have been made. Some people say 3-bedroom flats are equivalent to 2-bedroom flats and can be family homes. Okay, we can agree on that point, but if we calculate that's going to be 24 2-bedroom flats and 15, so in total you're going to have 24 2-bedroom flats, affordable housing. On that basis, I would have assumed that you would have had at least 1 child per family. So really saying that this is a third family orientated development, it doesn't show in the figures of the calculation of 13 children per 43 flats. So I'm very much minded in the calculations of how it's been assessed. And thereafter, what follows on about the play area and amenity space is also a concern. So without repeating, I echo everything that's been said by Councillor Coley and Councillor Brett. But in hindsight, I am likely to vote for this application, but I am concerned about the fact that how this housing mix has been done, and it would have been much better had it been looked at more on a family basis. Thank you.
Okay. You know, there are families that live in 2-bedroom places or up and down.
I
the
said
land.
that the calculation 24 flats and there's
There is-
13
okay,
children, so it hasn't
I'm not-
been worked out.
I'm not having a debate with you. I've listened to you. I'm going to speak myself. There is a formula, and that formula is set down. We don't make that up. No one in this room makes that up. It's a formula that gives the equivalent of 13 children, sorry. So that's where it is. You might be right. There might be more children in it, but that's the formula they use to get to the Section 106 outcome. So, but yeah, from where I stand, I voted against the original one next door. I was on the committee for that, for the very reasons, some of the reasons that have been spoken about tonight. But I'm very minded that we lost that on appeal, and it is right next door to where we are today. And I'm sure the developer on this one has been very minded of the appeal decision and what's gone before to bring that today. So anyway, yes, there's a bit of disquiet in me for this, but I really can't see on balance how I can vote against this in all conscience. So I'll be minded to vote for it when we go to the vote, which I'm going to go to, apart from Councillor Martin, who's coming in very late in the day.
I always do. No, I just probably would share a lot of the concerns that my colleagues have expressed. I don't think it's a perfect development. They often aren't perfect, in all honesty. And my biggest concern is actually the outrigger. I really don't like it, and I think over time it may get to look a lot worse. So if we can do anything about ensuring that that doesn't happen, and we're confident that those materials will last for more than, say, 30 years, which is what I'm reading it's likely to. But that is a concern, but it's not enough really for me to actually feel that I could turn it down. So like the chair, I think I'm probably going to vote for it.
Okay, I'm going to go to the vote if that's okay with the committee. So all those in favour, please show. Just keep your hands up a minute, sorry. Okay, just to be clear, there's someone at my door. Just to be clear, all those against? Any abstentions? Just going through it. Okay, all right, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to, is it Manhattan Business Park? Yes, Manhattan Business Park. So let me just get the papers out. So on your agenda, it's agenda item 10. Yes, it is, yeah. So this is John, is it John? John, would you like to present this one, John? Thank you.
Okay, this application is for a mix of industrial, office and residential development on an existing industrial site within the Westgate Triangle. As the plan shows, it lies on the north side of the A40, just west of the Hanger Lane Gyratory, Central line joins the southern boundary, and part of the HS2 line runs below the site. This site's part of the Westgate Triangle strategic industrial location, but traditionally, this area was an office location benefiting from the A40 and underground links into central London and had a quite limited industrial role. In fact, several office blocks within it have recently been approved for conversion to 600 flats. And the current mix of uses by floor space is actually 41% offices, 33% residential, and only 8% industrial. So you can see the number 2 is the application site within that. So an industrial area with not much industrial space within it. And this shows this picture again. The pink areas are the only industrial units within the Westgate Triangle. Now, this proposal would redevelop some older industrial units and flats to provide 5 blocks of 7 to 13 stories above a 2-story podium containing industrial space and offices. It would contain over 4,000 square meters of light industrial units on the ground level, over 2,500 square meters of office space on the first floor, 326 flats on floors 2 to 13, residential amenities floor space, including a gym and a cinema, and a cafe at the eastern entrance of the site. On the northern edge, a pedestrian street would provide a green link to the public open space beside the River Brent to the west and to Hanger Lane public transport to the east. This slide shows what that's going to look like with a lot of landscaping along the route. And to the south of the site, a new service vehicle route will provide access to basement level parking for the flats and offices and ground level industrial parking and service areas. We've had about 230 objections to the scheme, along with 9 representations in support. And the main objection points included an industrial site not being suitable for residential use, noise and air pollution to the flats, excessive building heights, impacts and views from nearby conservation areas, increased traffic, inadequate parking, increased pressures in schools, community facilities, and public transport. But these points are addressed in the report, and most of them can be suitably mitigated. Now, the London plan requires residential development within a strategic industrial location to be part of a plan-led process of industrial intensification, or according master plan. And the applicant has developed a master plan for the Westgate Triangle area in consultation with the GLA, Ealing Council, and adjoining landowners. This identifies areas where intensification and/or co-location could occur to increase industrial floor space. And there's various factors that would justify mixed-use development on this industrial site. First of all, it's a strategic industrial location that's unlike any other in Ealing, since, as you said, it's mostly occupied by offices, residential and retail uses, with very little industrial use. And given this character, residential use could coexist quite well with existing uses and potential future uses on adjoining sites. This scheme would result in a 23% increase of industrial floor space on the site and deliver modern, high quality, and more inflexible office space to replace older space lost from conversions of offices to residential that have happened in the past. To ensure there will be an overall increase in industrial space, the GLA have required a Section 106 obligation requiring that this development will not commence until the new industrial space approved on the adjoining Westworld site has been completed, and we have agreed that obligation. The 326 flats proposed will make a substantial contribution to local housing needs. 112 flats would be affordable, equating to 36% by habitable rooms. This would mean 34% London affordable rent and 66% shared ownership units. This amount does not accord with the London plan target for an industrial site, and the tenure mix doesn't accord with the council's preferred tenure mix. However, it's considered acceptable given the verified viability constraints of this site, which has exceptional development costs resulting from the HS2 tunnel and railway line being built below it. All these flats would exceed minimum size standards. 71% would be dual aspect and no single aspect unit would face directly north. There are concerns about noise from the A40 and the railway line industrial uses, but all the flats will be double glazed, mechanically heated and cooled, and it would have fully enclosed winter gardens on the south and north elevations to create wider, quieter screened environments, as well as facing the A40. And the condition requires filtered fresh air ventilation to all the flats. The flats would all have private amenity space in the form of balconies or gardens. Communal amenity areas are proposed at roof terraces at 8th, 9th and 10th floor levels, with additional roof terraces above the linking elements between the different blocks. And there will also be courtyard gardens on the upper ground and first floor podium with seating areas, grass lawns, informal play areas, and private garden terraces. As well as that, there's going to be a new pedestrian footpath along this north side. That would be landscaped with planters, trees, and benches. Overall, there will still be a modest shortfall in amenity space on the site, but that would be offset by sanctioned contribution to develop a nature park adjacent to the western boundary of the site. We don't consider there would be any unacceptable impacts on adjoining residential properties. There are objections from residential occupiers on overlooking of gardens, but these dwellings are 50 to 60 meters from the site and separated from it by the A40 and the railway line. While some nearby commercial buildings within the Westgate triangle may be converted to flats, given the large separation distances involved, no unacceptable impacts should arise to them either. When viewed from the south and the A40, the buildings would appear as a series of 5 finger blocks with linking elements between them, the scale and mass broken by variations in height, both in the north-south and east-west direction. Between these blocks, there would be a series of south-facing courtyards, screened from the A40 and railway noise by landscaping along their southern edge. And different materials are being considered to distinguish the various blocks and prevent them being viewed as a single mass in long views. And this can be refined since the condition requires approval of materials. This development of up to 13 stories comprises tall buildings on a site not identified for this in the development plan. However, the scheme has been assessed against the London Plan Policy D9 design criteria for tall buildings and the yielding housing design guidance, and we feel it largely accords with these. In terms of wider visual impact, the site lies within a dense urban area alongside the 10-story Westworld building, a 10-story building at Westgate House, and a 13-story building on the Hanger Lane gyratory. So overall, these buildings are considered compatible with the surrounding scale of development, not out of keeping with the existing townscape. This shows a view from Hanger Lane. Looking at heritage impacts, the height of the proposed development would make it visible from some nearby conservation areas, including the Brentham Garden Estate and the Brunswick conservation areas to the south of the A40. But no significant views or vistas of the proposed development were identified from the Hanger Hill Estate Conservation Area, which is over 500 meters away to the southeast. This view shows the buildings would be quite prominent from Clarendon Road within the Brunswick Conservation Area. And this was actually assessed as having a major adverse impact on visual amenity. However, as you can see, the existing Westworld building already appears in this view, and that's going to be removed, which will mitigate the impact to some extent. I think we acknowledge there will be an impact, but it's on only a few views, and some views will clearly be affected, but most views will be fairly minor impacts. And on balance, our view is that the proposed development and the wider benefits associated with it would outweigh the limited impacts on heritage assets. This turning to trees, there's 8 existing trees on the site's southern boundary. They're going to be replaced by 91 new trees to be planted. And also there's a Section 106 contribution for a lot of new tree planting on the open space owned by the council to the west. And that's considered sufficient to mitigate the loss of trees. It's been considered by transport services to have some implications on traffic, but to be acceptable subject to various conditions and financial contributions towards improvements to bus services, various transport infrastructure and traffic calming measures. There's also going to be a restriction on resident parking permits and free car club memberships to scheme residents. So overall, we think these measures will mitigate any adverse traffic effects. So to sum up, our view is the scheme will provide a large increase in the housing stock, 112 affordable units, large increase in modern industrial and office units within a strategic industrial location, 237 more jobs, and about £4.5 million in Section 106 and SIL contributions towards community facilities, transport infrastructure, local area improvements and open space enhancements. The sum of these benefits is considered to outweigh the limited deficiencies and impacts of the scheme, and as such, is recommended for conditional approval, subject to Section 106 and Section 278 legal agreements.
Right, thank you, John.
I should mention.
No.
Oh, right.
Can you turn your mic off, please? Thank you. We're going to go to the objectors.
Okay.
So Rosanna Fullerton, you've got 3 minutes. You can stand there or sit there or come up here. It's up to you. As ever, I will give you a 30-second prompt near the end and cut you off at 3 minutes if you run over. And that goes for both of you. Mr. Sutton as well.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Manhattan Properties pre-planning communications were less than robust. Conservation areas and amenity groups only became aware of this application once formal planning notices were up. Residents living here are opposed to the size of this development. Comparison with Westgate and Kantar is not relevant. These are repurposed former office buildings and front Ealing Road, which this site does not. These add 600 homes to an area that Ealing's policy document 2023 highlights as district park and local park deficient. Plus, there is the students' accommodation. Access to open spaces becomes especially relevant these past 2 years. The land is SIL. Westworld has submitted plans for a larger industrial warehouse unit. Requirements for residents are not the same as for industry. This is highlighted in the GLA report, stating that the scheme would be very dense, with significant quantity of diverse land use in a less than accessible location. It raises a number of concerns in terms of the overall residential quality and visual impacts, and conflicts between uses and movement. The road is narrow. It is 2 lanes with a third space for careful maneuvering if needed. In a report, there has only been 2 accidents in the past few years, and these were the pedestrians' fault. This statement means very little, as to date, families with children have not been living in the area. Further design issues are the quality of the residential units, the quality and usability of the industrial floor space, and concerns about being a hostile environment in the wider environment, with the risk that the amenity spaces provided
30 seconds.
Only serve as visual function rather than the use. Building homes for the future Who is going to live there? And is it saleable? 3 important factors to consider: location, location, location. The site is bounded by industrial units and a railway line with very poor access and view outs. Consider if you would wish to live there.
Can I just commend you? That was bang on 3 minutes. Must have practiced. Well done. So we have for the applicant, Nick Sutton. Again, 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
My name's Nick Sutton. I'm a planning consultant from Maven Plan, the agents for this application. The proposal before you represents over 3 years of pre-application and post-submission dialogue with the council, the GLA, and other landowners within and adjacent to this strategic industrial location. The primary objective of the scheme is to make better use of an existing low-scale industrial site with a mixed-use proposal that delivers more and better quality industrial floor space, new office floor space to replace some of the existing lower quality space that's been lost to office to residential conversions in the triangle, and 326 flats, including 112 affordable, as well as improved pedestrian access through the site to a newly landscaped public park to the west adjacent to the River Brent. It would also include a new cafe, given the wider triangle lacks any such amenities. Although strategic industrial locations are usually protected for heavy industrial uses, this particular part is made up of mostly office, residential, retail, trade, storage and hotel uses due to its excellent connections into central London via the Hanger Lane station. The site is therefore suitable for mixed-use development, provided it's designed in a way that doesn't prejudice the redevelopment potential of other adjacent sites for industrial uses. The master plan submitted with the application demonstrates that the capacity of other nearby sites for industrial use would not be limited by the proposal, and this has been reinforced by the recent permission for an industrial and warehousing scheme on the Westworld site to the northeast. Although the building will be visible from parts of the conservation areas to the south, these are more than 160 metres away and separated by the elevated railway line, the A40 and landscaping in between. The buildings would also have a varied height and form and contribute to the emerging townscape of taller buildings along the northern side of the railway line near Hanger Lane Station. The proposal would therefore form part of a backdrop of taller buildings, which would be distinct from rather than being seen as part of the conservation areas. The limited harm that would arise from some of the views within the conservation areas needs to be balanced against the other planning benefits, including better quality industrial floor space, new office floor space, more jobs, new housing, including 36% affordable housing, and improved access to the newly landscaped public open space to the west. The scheme would also provide over £4.5 million in financial contributions to fund other infrastructure improvements. We therefore ask that members support the officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Again, under 3 minutes or under. That's very good. Thank you. Okay, we have a ward councillor, Councillor Conti, who wishes to speak. And I'll remind you, up to not necessarily 4 or 5 minutes, but you have that opportunity.
Thank you. So there have been 232 objections from residents on this 13-storey development. It's too high and too bulky to position so close to the neighbouring conservation areas. This will be most notable as the image showed earlier from Clarendon Road and also from Sandal Road, and that the development would appear prominent and that it is assessed to have a major adverse impact on visual amenity. The development also has no architectural reference to the interwall houses on the nearby Brunswick Conservation Area or the feeling of the Brentham Estate. This prominent development will not be in keeping with the surrounding area and will have a negative visual impact on the conservation area. The Transportation Technical Report says that TfL have serious concerns regarding pedestrian safety, particularly with residents walking to and from the site in hours after dark. And the wider local environment significantly detracts from the healthy streets indicators that people feel safe and people feel relaxed. As local councillors, we have been contacted by River Island, whose staff use the gyratory to access the station and the underpasses. And there's been consistent concerns raised at police meetings locally about the site. Now, I know the report states that there are plans for mitigation such as lighting and CCTV, but I am not reassured that these will be enough. Additionally, the report does state that the Ealing Transport Service is concerned about the increase in congestion, especially during the morning peak hours. Already, the gyratory is extremely congested at those times, and this will have a negative impact further on residents more widely than just people living directly off the gyratory. I have concerns about noise and air pollution from the site. The report states that mitigation is that there will be double glazed windows and ventilation, so there's no need to open the windows. I question desire to live in accommodation where the windows should not be opened. The council's landscape section raises concerns about trees being removed. I wasn't particularly sure, and I wanted more of a point of clarification really about the council's landscape section mentions about 91 trees being removed. But then in the report on the same page, it talks about only 8 trees being removed. So I just wanted that to be clarified because it's quite a big difference. I understand obviously 91 new trees are being built, but not being built, sorry, being planted, but that isn't the same as, for example, mature trees being removed. The biodiversity report also notes that opportunities to provide further habitat creation enhancement within the site to secure a net gain are not feasible on the site due to the type and layout and the end use of the development. And attempts to increase hedgerows do not compensate for this loss. The development does not meet the requirements in many different areas as outlined already. It also only provides 36% affordable housing, which is below Ealing's preferred mix. So in addition to this, and the areas I've outlined, including the impact on the conservation area, increased congestion, and the impact on biodiversity, I believe that this application should be rejected.
Thank you, Councillor Conti. Well under 5 minutes. Thank you. John, is there anything you'd like to come, particularly about trees and the numbers? That's a bit confusing. Perhaps you can clarify it to Councillor Conti.
I thought that was in the report, but basically there's 8 existing trees along the southern boundary. I think they're semi-mature trees, not particularly good condition. They're going to be removed. 91 new trees will be planted on the site. In addition to that, there'll be a Section 106 contribution to plant lots of new trees on the open space land to the west of the site, beside the River Brent. So that's the situation.
Does that clear it up for you, Councillor Conti? Thank you. Right, okay. Is there anything else you'd like to address from the objector? Rosanna?
I don't think so. I think most of these points have been mentioned in the report. I don't think there's any more questions there. Point of pedestrian safety, as the councillors indicated, there are a lot of measures proposed, including, I think, a pedestrian crossing and various traffic calming and other measures to improve pedestrian safety from what it is now. These seem positive benefits of the scheme overall. I don't think there's anything else I've got to add.
Okay, right. I'm going to throw it open to questions from the committee. Councillor Gallant, then Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Chair. One question for the industry that may or may not occupy the plinth at the bottom. Is there any idea what that could be? Any control over what it could be? And could you elaborate a little bit further, please, on why the scheme's been allowed to fall short of the recommendations for affordable housing?
Hold that thought. Councillor Rice.
I did want to mention about affordable housing as well, but I think that's been said by both councillors so far, so we'll talk about that. Just one thing I'd just like to ask a bit about is the Westgate Triangle Master Plan, and a little bit about more what that's actually designed to do. And the one thing that does concern me here is that it's an extremely busy area for the road. And there's permission for, there was the permission for a couple of other sites in the area that we gave permission for at the last meeting, plus this one as well. I'm just wondering how that's all going to work and how that might inconvenience motorists, for example, who might be using that road if we're going to have an awful lot of construction work. I don't know if this is something that's really thought about, how that's all coordinated. And also just like to ask about the sports provision. It's in the Section 106 as £318,000 for sports provision. That certainly is needed because we know later in the report that development of that size should be providing I think it's 4,800 square meters of dedicated sport and exercise space. I'm just wondering about how that might work out and where that could possibly be. Sometimes these types of monies that are coming through, you might put it into perhaps existing space, but obviously nearby. I mean, the only place I can think of is Gurnell, and Gurnell isn't something that really we can do very much with at the moment. So I'm just wondering where that money might go. It's quite a substantial sum. It is needed. Have we really thought through what we might possibly do with it? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Busuttil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Question is this, and sorry if I've missed it in the report, but what's the rationale for not building this until an adjacent planning application is built?
Okay, got that. So no other questions? Councillor Anand. I'd be surprised if you didn't have a question, put it that way.
A clarification of the calculation made for the carbon offset, please. I'm trying to see, and what 106. So I've got on page 45, 538,650. How does that correspond to 95 pounds per ton, please?
Right, that's an eclectic mix of questions for you. John, did you catch them all? You're writing the last one down, aren't you? Okay, I'll give you as much time as you need.
Right. I think the first question was about the types of industrial users which might occupy these units. What we've been told by the applicant, and it's in their commercial and industrial report they submitted, is there's quite a strong demand for small industrial units, mainly from light industrial. The film industry in particular have shown a lot of interest in these units for productions and so on, but a range of other kind of light industrial uses. Apparently the A4 corridor has very strong demand and low vacancy. The next question was about why there's not, to justify the affordable housing being less than required. Well, on industrial sites, of course, or former industrial sites, the London plan says there should be 50% affordable housing provision, and this scheme is only providing 36%. And also the mix of the tenure mix of the units is not the council's preferred mix. The reason we think that's acceptable is that the site has exceptional development costs, which would otherwise make it unviable with any greater amount of affordable housing. And these costs are related mainly to the HS2 tunneling going under the site, which requires extra foundations and all sorts of measures to deal with trains running under your site, which adds very large costs. And the viability information provided by the applicant has been verified twice by independent advisors for the council. So we think there's a justifiable reason for accepting a lower level of affordable housing in this case. The point about I think it was the traffic impacts during construction in the Westgate Triangle. Well, there may well be. Of course, one of the conditions will require a construction management plan. And part of that is to deal with construction traffic and make sure that is routed properly and controlled so it doesn't cause disruption to other parts of the Westgate Triangle. On the sports provision, that requirement and figure was given to us by the Leisure Services Department. They didn't tell us what they're going to do with that money. I think that's something that's up to them to decide. They haven't indicated where that money will be spent, I'm afraid. And the point about why the scheme shouldn't be developed before the Westworld industrial development is completed, this is a requirement from the GLA. The GLA are only happy to have residential development in this strategic industrial location if there's an overall increase in industrial floor space resulting from it. And the master plan the applicants provided showed there could be an increase of industrial floor space, but there was a limited number of sites where that could happen. One was this site, and the other is the Westworld site. The Westworld scheme has an application in now, which has been approved subject to Section 106 agreement, that will provide quite a large amount of industrial floor space. The GLA wants to be satisfied that that's actually going to be delivered, that this residential scheme just won't go ahead and then Westworld won't be developed for industrial space. And that's the reason why there's a Section 106 obligation not to develop the site into Westworld. Industrial space is actually completed and delivered, just to make sure that we get an increase of industrial space overall on this site. Oh, on the carbon offset figure, well, these figures are given to us by the council's energy advisor, who calculates the potential number of carbon dioxide tons that could be generated and applies a £95 per ton figure to that. I mean, I don't know how he calculates that, but these are given to us by our consultees, I'm afraid. I think that was all.
Right, Councillor Nand, it seems like you want to come back on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the report on page 45 says, and in the last item, when I calculated 95 and the carbon offset, I got the figure what was exactly in the section 106. It was straightforward. But in this particular one, it says 219 tons over 30 years. And then if you multiply that by 95, it comes to something different to what I'm seeing in the report. And then there's 538K in the summary, but then in the section 106, it's got 544. So the figures are not tallying up. Thank you.
Okay.
Say that figure can also alter because when the development is built, that information is reassessed as well. So at this stage, it's an indication based on the assessment of the scheme now. Obviously, the higher amount means that there's more of a carbon offset payment. Obviously, a lower amount is a good thing because obviously it means that the building is being designed in a much more sustainable way. So it does go through it is calculated based on a formula, and it will obviously vary from scheme to scheme.
Okay, did everyone get the answers to their questions? Thank you. Right, I'm going to open it up for debate now. Councillor Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for getting my name right too. That's very good of you. This for me is it is a big building. It's a big mass. It's a big lump there that's being introduced. And one of the pictures I'm looking at is it's against the existing Westworld building, which, as we know, is going to be much lower. If it is delivered, it's going to be much lower than that. So the visual impact of this building is going to be even greater in that area, and obviously impact all the residential areas which are not that far away. I don't see that if this is a building, this is not a necessary building. This is not a building that needs to be there. And therefore, I don't see why we have to allow a building that to be built that compromises the recommendations for affordable housing. And the other concern I have is that if you mix residential and industrial, it introduces this uncertainty. What kind of industry will go there? What kind of in and out transport? What kind of truck movement? What about the hours? Trucks moving in late at night on 24-hour basis, disturbing residents. You could be just building up, you could be just asking for trouble there. So I'm afraid I am inclined to vote against this development.
Anyone else to add to the debate? Right, okay, if there's Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thank you to Mrs. Fullerton and Councillor Conti. Yeah, just thank you to the people who made representations. I mean, something was said about architectural reference, and I thought, well, the architectural reference probably hasn't existed since the dual carriageway, since the A40 became a dual carriageway. I mean, why would it? I mean, the conservation sites of Brunswick and Brentham are 100 years old. So, of course, it's not going to reference in. It just but it's not there. It's the other side of the dual carriageway. So, I mean, I think of the whole area as a whole. I use the word master plan, not with a capital M. I'm not talking about the things that the plans that happened, but where that area has changed. There was some big anchor employers and factories, Guinness's, although it was in Brent, it was very much part of the theme of Ealing and that area and Park Royal. It has changed. There's people living in homes, what used to be Guinness's. And there's industry there as well. There's mixed use, it works. We need the homes. We need new businesses. We need new infrastructure. We need new accommodation for businesses and residents. And this fits in with that narrative and what's the word? Initiatives and objectives. I understand why the people in conservation areas don't want it, but on balance, we need to have schemes introduced and developed and put forward. So I will be minded to vote for this.
Councillor Nand.
I also welcome this proposal. It is an improvement to the area. I see that there is a disadvantage perhaps to having a mixed use, whereas you will always have some places with mixed use. Either you live above a shop or you live above an industrial area. It's not so common, but I do actually support this application. It will be an improvement. 10 years ago, it might have been very much different when there wasn't so much residential happening in that area. It's a hub now. It's close to a station, and I'm minded to approve. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any other indications. I'm just going to say that from my own point of view, I think it's a very good scheme and will improve, in my view, the area. And yes, if you can see the buildings from across the A40 and across the railway and across the vegetation, that might be a little bit irksome, but I don't think it's the end of the world for most people. Okay, so I'm going to go to the vote. Okay, all those in favour, please show. All those against? Just for clarity, any abstentions? No, that's it. Thank you. So that application was approved. Yes, yeah. If you want to take 2 minutes to fill up your water bottles or otherwise, I'll give you 2 minutes. Who's missing? Right. You spend a lot of time talking while we're not in committee, and when we're in committee, it's very quiet. You're getting a red card soon. It got very hot during that debate. John, sorry to cut you off there, but I think people were melting at the time. And I just wanted to get into the debate and get on. So when Councillor Rice comes back, I think we got a full house. I know we haven't. Councillor Mohammed as well. No, we've got Councillor Faduma's got to come in. Yeah. Right, try and get this done, shall we? Right. Oh. Paduma. Was it getting hot down there during that debate? Or during, it's not up here. I'm glad you're all non-melting. Right, okay, let's move on. We are now moving on to what is on your item, your agenda is item 9, 13, 15, the Green Southall. So who's that? Which is that yours again, John? Oh, I think I'll leave the door open because it allows some air in. Sorry, go on.
Right. This application is for a 23-storey development on a derelict commercial site just south of Southall Railway Station and Southall Town Centre. It's within the Southall Opportunity Area, and this area has been subject to major development in recent years with permissions for large residential land schemes in high buildings of up to 23 stories, such as the Archies, King's House and the Margarita site. This slide shows the types of and sizes of the buildings with the application property, the green site in the middle of these. This scheme would provide 95 flats in a part 23, part 19 and part 14 story building with a flexible community meeting space, this large area here, At ground floor level, it would be car-free with 181 cycle parking spaces. In addition, some 19% of the site would be provided as public realm area, this area here adjoining the green. This will provide widened pavements, green planting areas with new trees, benches, and integrated street lighting to improve the public realm area between the scheme and the raised highway. New landscaping is also proposed in both the Green and Hortus Road frontages, while the existing retaining wall to the green would be retained to provide a robust buffer to traffic and associated noise. Now, this shows the existing situation on the left and roughly what it might look like with these public realm improvements. The scheme would make an important contribution to meeting local housing needs, and 35% of residential units by habitable rooms, amounting to 33 flats, would be affordable. Now, the proposed tenure split of 70% intermediate and 30% London affordable rent, again, does not meet the council's preferred tenure mix. However, an independent viability appraisal concludes that the scheme could not viably support more affordable housing or a different tenure mix. These flats would all exceed minimum size standards and all would be dual aspect units. They'd all have private balconies to London plan standards, the majority of these being inset balconies. Communal amenity areas are proposed on the 1st and 14th floors, and these would include children's play space. Given the constraints of this small site, there would still be an overall shortfall in the amenity space, but this would be mitigated by a Section 106 contribution towards improved provision in Southall Manor House grounds. The development is not considered to have significant impacts on the amenity of adjoining occupiers due to the orientation of the building and separation distances from nearby dwellings. The design has evolved through extensive negotiations between planning officers and the GLA. It comprises a main building of 22 stories above the basement, with attached side elements of 14 stories and 19 stories. The plan form of the building, as the slide shows, would appear as a square rotated within a larger square. The main taller element would be set at a 45-degree angle to the Hortus Road street edge, with the lower side elements aligned to the street edges, and this allows the main elevations to be set back from the edges of the site and reduce the visual impact. The building would have a well-defined base, middle, and crown, differentiated by different colors of brick, window sizes, and decorative metal panels. The varied heights of the side elements would create a stepped effect, visually reducing the overall massing. This would be reinforced by different shades of brick to differentiate side elements from the main taller element. Various design revisions have been made to reflect GLA comments, and on balance, the scale of the buildings and the design approach are considered to be of good quality and to complement other developments in the area. Now, this development can be considered as a tall building on a site not identified for tall buildings, not within the town centre. However, it does lie in the Southall Opportunity area, which indicates potential for taller buildings, and a number of other tall buildings have been approved nearby. As you can see from this slide, the height of the taller element would be similar to adjoining approved buildings at King's House and the nearby Archie's site on Merrick Road. The scheme has been assessed against London Plan Policy D9 design criteria and the Ealing Housing Design Guidance, and we feel it would largely accord with these. This reflects that the architectural quality is of a high standard, it would not harm long views, and the height would not be out of keeping in the existing townscape of tall buildings in this area. It would also have a well-defined top, middle, and base, and active street frontages. This slide shows the efforts that were made to have a fairly active frontage with various entrances and the residential community meeting room on this frontage. Along Hortus Road, the scale of the building would transition and be reduced to the same size as the existing two-story semi-detached houses beside it. The proposal would not cause a significant harm to nearby heritage assets, and any harm would be outweighed, we feel, by the benefits of the proposal. On balance, we feel this is although this is a high prominent building, it would fit reasonably well into the townscape of a part of Southall that's already dominated by the tall buildings. It would complement these as well as provide a well-designed landmark feature beside the new railway station. It would provide a cluster of the King's House and Merrick Place developments, marking the gateway into the opportunity area and improving legibility of this part of Southall. This slide actually shows the building in the middle, along with the King's House and the arches schemes, just to give an indication of how it would fit in with these other approved buildings. This is a car-free development. Transport Services and TfL have assessed its potential implications for the highway network and considered it acceptable subject to reviews of the existing parking zones, various transport infrastructure measures and bus service improvements. And so Section 106 contributions have been agreed for these. The site's highly accessible by public transport, and with the restriction on resident parking permits and provision of car club memberships to scheme residents, potential impacts would be adequately mitigated. So overall, the scheme will provide a number of planning and regeneration benefits, including a sizable increase in the housing stock, 33 affordable units, a greatly improved public realm area on the site, enhanced appearance of a prominent site beside the new Elizabeth Line station and a gateway to Southall Town Centre, as well as provision of a flexible community meeting space available to the local community, and in the order of £1.2 million in Section 106 and civil contributions. These benefits are considered to weigh the scheme's limited deficiencies, and so it's recommended for conditional approval subject to Section 106 and Section 278 legal agreements. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Right, we have an objector, Alexander Forbes, who is online. Alexander, I don't know if you've heard this, but you have 3 minutes, and I will remind you at 30 seconds, and I will stop you at 3 minutes, as I will with everyone. So,
may I show some of my pictures whilst I'm speaking? They're the same pictures that I've sent to one of your colleagues.
Yeah, but within the 3 minutes, yes.
Thanks very much. Do you want me to begin now?
Yes, away you go. Yeah, please.
Thanks. I object to this proposal on the old bank house as the great-great-grandson of Southall philanthropist and former neighbour Henry Phelps Baxter, who lived at the Grange on the farm opposite across the green, now TRS Apartments. The Baxter children used to wave at Queen Victoria's train as it passed the farm that their father ran. And the Martin Court flats now stand where the orchard was. In the Heritage Townscape and Visual Assessment by Dominus Property Development Limited, section 5.6, it says that the bank house would have played a key role within the area. The layout of the building, along with the intersection, has some value in that it has been retained throughout historic development of Southall District Centre. As such, it is considered to have some historic interest. In my own personal view, as a gateway itself between the gateway and green character areas which have been identified, because of its mock Georgian facade, its sash windows, which were typical of a building of its period, as to the historic plurality of the green between the Victorian Great Western Railway Station ticket hall on the bridge and the listed manor house further down the green. Ironically, Henry Phelps Baxter's son, Richard Wakeham Baxter, as director of Gosney and Baxter Developers, donated the listed manor house to the newly formed Southall Urban District Council, allowing its survival to this day. This present proposal seeks to create a New York Tower over a thriving multicultural village and spoiling the setting of the rural Grade 2 listed manor house, the Grade 2 listed water tower, and the Grade 2 listed war memorial. My family almost certainly used the bank house as it was part of the transition from the country village to urban multicultural village that the Baxters were part of. Today, I enjoy visiting the Sikh temple and the Hindu temples and Southall Church of God on Norwood Road, which was actually founded by my great-great-grandfather, Henry Baxter, in 1862 for his farm workers. opposite what is now the bank house. Loss of the old bank house would be contrary to National Planning Policy Framework 2021, Section 12, paragraph 30, sense of place. Locals have respected and complemented and revived local heritage such as the Himalaya Hall and the Tudor Rose at great personal effort. This proposal endangers Southall Section 12 sense of place, history and character, and does not respond in any way to it. The bank house was identified as a local heritage asset in the Ealing local draft Southall Green SPD. The site, according to Greater London Council report GLA 21-1164 S1, is not identified in the development plan as suitable for a tall building, and as such, the proposal does not comply with the London Plan policy. Only 35% of this proposal is so-called affordable housing. Tower blocks were not a universal success.
3 minutes.
I myself am a symptom of the current housing problem, living myself now in a hostel.
Alexander, I'll have to stop you there, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a speaker for the applicant, Jay Lawalia. I said that somewhere
you
close to
said
it.
that fine. You said that
All right.
fine. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Jay Singh Alawalia, and I'm a principal at Dominus, which is a family business, a development company run by my father, my two brothers, and I. My father, Sukhpal Singh Alawalia, arrived in London as a 13-year-old refugee with my grandparents, fleeing the regime of Idi Amin in Uganda. Dad would go on to create Euro Car Parts, growing the business from a small shop to the UK's largest auto parts distributor of more than 300 branches. He set up one of the first branches, in fact, not far from the Green, and I fondly remember spending time there in my childhood, working my summers at the Southall branch and spending Sundays at the Gurdwara by Park Avenue, and hopefully being treated to some magic corn on the Broadway on the way home. He put our family's values at the center of everything he did, training young people, creating jobs, and adding value to the communities where he worked. Our family's focus today is with Dominus, and over the past 12 years, we have built and operated developments across London and beyond. We've always worked with high caliber architects and contractors to build great schemes that engage positively with their local context, have continued delivering homes and hotels throughout the pandemic, and we place a strong emphasis on social value. Our new hotel by St. Paul's Cathedral opened yesterday, and we have 90 homes in construction in Enfield, with another 75 on the way. And so we were delighted when the chance came to work here, and we're proud of our scheme. It will deliver 95 new homes, including 33 affordable homes, in the Southall Gateway part of the Southall Opportunity area, a very short walk to the town centre and the train station. We know the current building has been a bit of a blight, and we want to do something about this. Our scheme will open up and significantly improve the area around the site, particularly along the Green, which is especially unwelcoming at the moment. Through our local consultation and with our planning application, our Director of Social Value and Community Investment, Wesley Ankra, has begun conversations with the local community about sharing the ground floor of the building between residents and other community groups for them to have free access. That's a conversation we look forward to continuing as we move through the construction programme and then realising our scheme. Our proposals will also provide almost £1 million to local facilities via Section 106 contributions, including for Havelock Primary School and Villiers High School, and for new public amenity space and children's play space at Southall Manor House grounds. Alongside our new landscaping, there are also improvements to road junctions on the Green, funding for bus service improvements, and funding for a review of the local controlled parking zone. We look forward to continuing to work with the council and the local community in months to come, and we hope members are minded to grant us planning permission this evening. Thank you very much for your attention.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to remind you 30 seconds, but you were 30 seconds under the time. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Anything you want to pick up, John?
The only point I would make, the objector, his main point, I think, was about the loss of the existing building on the site. As far as I know, the building is not in a conservation area, it's not listed. And as far as I understand, it's not locally listed either. And in addition, about 2 years ago, the applicants got approval to demolish the building. So there's not much we can do to keep it in that situation. On the point about whether it complies with London plan policies on high buildings, so I think we think it does. It may not be in a town centre, but we think it meets the criteria for policy D9, so we're satisfied with it.
Thank you, John. So I'd remind the committee, we're not really debating whether the building can stay or go. It's already got permissions to be knocked down. We are dealing with what's in front of us on the committee papers tonight. So, right, questions. Right, let's note these down. Sorry? Does it matter? Right, okay. I'll go the other way this time because I keep going that way. Go Councillor Padder, Councillor Brewster, Councillor Gallant, Councillor Anand, Councillor Brett, Councillor Rice, Councillor Mohammed. Oh, they've got a full house here. Councillor Coley. Anyone else? Am I missed anyone? Yeah, I've got Councillor Rice. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Padder.
Thank you, Chair. I've only got a small question. It's only clarification. It on sports management. On sports management, it says proposed ground floor amenity area should be as flexible to allow it to accommodate a wide range of sport and exercise activities. Looking at the site and on-site visit, and also know that site very well because that was used for one of our GLA elections committee room. Can you explain to me where this sport exercise activities would be? Because it's not a very big space.
We can get to that. What I'll do, John, I'll take half of them and you can come back because there's going to there's quite a few people asking questions, and then we'll do the other half. Okay, I'll get to the end of Councillor Anand and then I'll come over to you and then we'll do the rest. So, Councillor Busuttil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Could you tell me the reason why the affordable housing mix is 70% shared ownership? That's the first question. The second question is, when we went on the site visit, there was evidence of an underpass adjacent to the site. Is that going to be opened up if the site is built?
Okay, Councillor Gallant.
Thank you very much, Chair, and for your fantastic pronunciation. I believe there's only one avenue of escape, one staircase of escape. Could you explain that rationale? Second question about the existing two-story building on the site, which would actually would stay there. Was there any attempt to actually acquire that area too? Could you explain, please, how the building will be serviced given the very limited space and limited traffic access? Fourth question is, why was there no commercial amenity or commercial element introduced into the basement for residents?
Right. Okay. So, Councillor Anand, and then we'll go to John.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the accessibility of disabled units. According to this application, it should be 10, but I can't see in the report. I'll be grateful if you could actually identify where it is in the mix. And secondly, about the housing.
Sorry, what was that? Flexibility of what?
The disabled access.
Oh, disabled
units. So the units. Homes. Sorry, homes. And the rationale that you've actually said that you have agreed, or we on balance, that there should be no 3-bedroom houses. How was that balance made or conclusion made? Thank you.
Right. Okay. So some of those slightly repeats from the first one. Okay. John, have you got those noted down? I've got the notes. So if you, I think Alex has too. So if you can't remember, we'll come back to them. So Councillor Padder was about sports management in a small space. It was easy to manage it. It's just what the sport is.
Yes. Well, there's the amenity, the meeting area is 92 square meters, which is a reasonable size of space. I think that would be suitable for quite a range of activities. Things like yoga, for example, you could easily do that in there. It seems big enough for a range of things. It obviously wouldn't be big enough for indoor football or anything like that, but it seems you could do quite a range of activities in that kind of space. And it is meant to be flexible. It's not just for sports. It's meant for meetings, social events, and a range of other things. It just takes up quite a chunk of the ground floor, so I'm not sure they could make it much bigger. Okay. On the affordable housing mix and why the 70% shared ownership, well, that's the proportion that the applicant put forward as part of the scheme. And normally the council's housing department would ask for a different mix with less shared ownership and more social rented. But the applicant has provided viability information, which has been independently assessed, showing that the scheme can't provide more affordable units or a different tenure mix than the one that's been put forward. So that's why we've accepted that mix. The third question was that whether the public realm area would be opened up if the site's built. Was that?
No, it's about there's an underpass that's closed. We saw it on site visit.
Ah, right.
And are there any plans to open it that you're aware of? And I suspect the answer is going to be no.
No, we're not aware of anything at this moment in time, but obviously the applicant's proposal is including some substantial public realm improvements around the perimeter of the site. It's not at this stage envisaged that that subway will open, but maybe it can be considered in the future.
Right. Next question, I think, was about fire safety, fire escapes and staircases. The scheme, because it's a high building, was referred to the Health and Safety Executive. We only got their comments at a very late stage, and I've included what their response was in the briefing notes. The applicant has taken these on board and has made some internal amendments to the scheme to satisfy and fully address the HSE comments. So I think that point should have been adequately dealt with. On the question of whether there's been any attempt to acquire the two-story building adjoining the site, that's not a question I have an answer to.
No, I just, yeah, ignore that because it's an unfair question to the officer.
The point about servicing, the initial scheme that was submitted to us had off-site servicing, which was objected to by the transport section. And after negotiations, the applicant revised the scheme to provide the servicing within the site off of Porters Road, and that there is adequate provision there to get vehicles in and out without causing any traffic problems. So, and that's wholly within the site.
The next one's about commercial.
Yes, the commercial unit. Well, we have to consider the scheme that's put to us. I think there wasn't some discussion about whether there could have been a commercial out on the ground floor, and I guess that's a commercial decision for the applicant to make, whether they think that's viable or not. I guess in some ways you could say it's not particularly good location for a retail unit at this point in the economic cycle, and given its access difficulties. But again, it's really up to the applicant to decide what they can viably put in that site. I don't think we can insist on having a commercial unit there. Yeah, on the point of accessible units. Well, in the report itself, the scheme would provide 10 wheelchair accessible units, and that's more than 10% of 95. So it does seem to meet the policy requirement for 10% of accessible units. And lastly, why is there no 3-bedroom units in the scheme? The housing department did comment on this and suggest the applicant did provide 3-bedroom units. That hasn't been provided. I think on balance, we looked at it, and given the location of the site, quite a busy kind of junction with side traffic, and the fact there's a lot of other housing development very close to this, which does include a lot of 3-bedroom units, including the gasworks site and the arches and so on. We felt on balance, it'd be difficult to insist on 3-bedroom units in this scheme, which maybe wasn't the best location for them. I think that was all the points.
Yeah,
I
that's
had.
you've addressed all the questions that I've got written down. So Councillor Brett, then Councillor Rice, then Councillor Mohammed, and then Councillor Cody.
So
That's
my
it.
question's been asked.
All right, okay, thank you very much. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask about the affordable housing, because it's a less than 35% affordable units, which has often been my understanding. I've raised the point before at committee, and I do think it's quite misleading when we start talking in terms of 35% habitable rooms. I think this month the reports have actually made an attempt to try and explain what the actual guidelines are and what we're supposed to be aiming for. So perhaps we would nice to actually have a little bit more to expand upon that and to say what exactly is it that we're looking for? Are we looking for 35% affordable units, or is it habitable rooms when we normally look at these applications? And there's just one other question I've got, that one thing that stood out to me, which is something I've never seen in a report here before, was the Metropolitan Police on page 41 mentioning about access control to the building, which enables a dynamic lockdown to protect all users in the event of a marauding terrorist style attack. And it's also mentioned about prohibiting use of drones. I'm just actually wondering what actually brought that on to actually get that to become a consideration. So to say that is something that's so new to me, and I'm just wondering, is there some kind of new issue that we have going on at the moment? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, there are lots of high towers in and around the area proposed at the moment. Has it been a consideration of actually looking at the design and having a consistency to look alike the rest of the other high towers that are in process to be built or already been built? Otherwise, you'll have different sort of not consistent uniform that could actually have an impact in terms of look in the area. My other question is, which we do have in Southall a lot of problems, is parking. Would there be a parking for this a building for the residents? And if it isn't, what will be the proposal for the residents to do? Because it's very limited in that area, any parking to be parked. And my last question is the green area proposed. Is this going to be something that is going to be just for residents, or is it going to be open to the public? I just want to know a bit more about if there's a green area for the residents, because again, there aren't many areas where there's parks that the residents could go for this building if it's built. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Coley, last but not least.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my question regarding why there's no 3-bedroom flats, I think that's some issue that we're going to have to address later on, but you've justified it. Well, I'm not satisfied with that justification, but you've given your reason. I'm a little bit concerned about the 2-story building on the right-hand side of the front elevation. Is there no way of doing a compulsory purchase? Because it's going to sit there and I think it's sticking out like a sore thumb. In general, I do welcome this application. There's an enhancement in the public realm. There's also, I think the site will look a lot better when you drive by. But can anything be done about that side building? Thank you.
Right, okay, not so many this time round. Let's start with the habitable rooms as against habitable, sorry, as against homes debate.
Right, on that issue, I mean, as far as I know, the London plan requires 35% of affordable dwellings by habitable rooms. So, and that's what we tend to work for. I mean, that may not always equate to 35% by units, but if they meet 35% by habitable rooms, that's adequate in terms of London plan policy.
Can I just come in there? Obviously, the housing guidance, actually, we've dealt with this a few times at planning committee previously. it does obviously require the affordable housing to be broken down by habitable room, units, as well as floor space. So they're all important, and we will routinely report this to you, giving you the various breakdowns. But obviously there can be some variances between unit numbers and habitable rooms, depending on the mix, etc. So yeah, they're all equally important.
Right. I think Councillor Rice asked to this point about the conditions which came from the Metropolitan Police. The Metropolitan Police were consulted on the application. Their response was to ask for these conditions to be added. I must say, I haven't seen conditions like that before. They didn't explain the reasons for it. I can only guess it's because the site is close to the new Elizabeth Line station.
I think Alex wants to come in, John, on this. Sorry.
I think it's a new officer commenting on those aspects, because I have seen those sorts of conditions being recommended on other developments as well. So I think it might be just that, and in particular on any kind of taller buildings and office developments, things like that. Don't get alarmed. I think it's just a standard thing.
Yeah,
now.
I think it's going to be because of terrorist incidents, etc., and drone incidents at Gatwick and what have you. Gatwick, Heathrow, I can't remember. Anyway, let's move on. High towers, consistent design, John.
Yes. Well, I think when we consider these high buildings, I don't think we necessarily look for a consistent design. We look for good quality architecture. In this case, I think the applicants have tried to come up with a design which they say fits in well with some of the existing high buildings and makes them look a bit like a family of buildings. But I'm not sure that's something we necessarily strive to get applicants to do. I think it's the quality to design rather than being consistent with other buildings in the area to try and provide some variety at least. So probably we don't seek to do that. On the parking for the scheme, well, it's an entirely car-free scheme, so there is no parking for the residents. In fact, the Section 106 Green would prevent the residents getting parking permits in any controlled parking zone. In terms of what they are getting for cars, they get free membership of a car club for several years. But I think because the site is so close to good public transport at Southall Station, I suspect that people who want to live there would probably be people who didn't have cars and were happy to use public transport. So that's the situation with the scheme. On the question about the green area, I wasn't quite sure which green area that was. There are communal amenity areas at the...
John, let me ask Councillor Mohammed to clarify then.
My question was, is there a sort of green areas within this building?
Well, the answer is yes. There are yes, there are communal garden areas on the rooftops of the first and 14th floors, and they include children's play spaces. So these are the green areas for this scheme. There are small landscaped areas at ground level, and of course there's the public realm area, landscaping and benches, but that's pretty much it. It's a very small site, so any green areas really are on the rooftops, and that's as much, I think, as they can fit in.
I think your question was focused on who has access to those amenity spaces. So the open spaces at ground level around the building is obviously open to everyone, but the amenity areas up on the podium decks on the higher floors would only be accessible by the residents who live in the block. So they would be private for the use of those occupants.
Did you want to come back?
Yeah, just one last question. I'm assuming all the health and safety aspects are being considered for those top level green area for the residents in terms of the design stage?
High levels ones, yeah.
High level, yeah.
Okay.
It's on the, which floor you said? It's a top roof.
14th.
It's the first and 14th floors.
First and 14th.
Just confirm that, please.
Yes, we would also seek precise details on the landscaping on those upper floor levels as well. And it's a similar question to one of the earlier items where we would look at the enclosure as well around that for just exactly that reason from a safety perspective as well. We also check that the landscaping can obviously be accommodated within those roof structures as well.
Right.
I think the
John,
last
if you-
question was about the
Compulsory purchase, wasn't it?
compulsory purchase of a two-story building. Well, compulsory purchase is quite a complex, difficult process that takes quite a long time. You'd have to be carried out by the council. It's not up to the applicant to do it. So unless the applicant came to us and with justification for why the council should take action to instigate compulsory purchase, I guess the council wouldn't get involved in that. I mean, that's not something the applicant can do themselves. And they haven't given us a reason why the council should do it either. But it is a lengthy process, subject to objections and public inquiries, usually.
Councillor Cully, you wanted, you indicated to come back in.
The public realm area on the ground floor, I'm just a bit concerned about antisocial behavior taking place there. I do welcome that. It looks very nice. But I'm, while even during the site visit, there's a possibility of a lot of antisocial behavior taking place. Has any consideration been given to that?
Yes, yeah, obviously, the site conditions, as we saw, the site is obviously buried into the ground, and so there is presently the prospect of some antisocial behaviour around the site. But obviously, the proposal increases that public realm around the base of the building, with that intention of obviously resolving some of those issues. It's about the dimensions of the space, but also the design of the space, including lighting and landscaping finish. So I think the intention through this design is obviously to minimise the antisocial behaviour around the site. And clearly the active use of the base of the building is also really important. Obviously at the moment, the building is not in use, and obviously the windows are fairly high. So that's also a key factor as part of the design, is obviously to make sure that there is activity going on, and that would obviously limit and deter antisocial behaviour around the base of the building.
Yes, and looking at the improvements, they look a lot better than it is at the moment. And yes, there was some unsavoury characters around, but proof of the pudding was while we were there, they moved off. So if you've got an active area and you've got community use in that area, it may deter that sort of behaviour. May is my answer to that. Okay. That's the end of the questions. So I open for debate. Councillor Anand, Councillor Gallant, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Rice, and Councillor Busuttil.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody, for your presentations. I welcome a change to that site. It's not very nice. And the improvements would be really good. And we need to move in that and improve our infrastructure. But at the same note, I draw a line. And the line is that we have made a tall buildings policy, and we need to stick by it. We have a requirement of mixed-use development in some places. This was a past mixed-use development, or at least had some commercial element. And when it comes to being sympathetic to design and improvement, we are saying that we're improving the site, but have seen no evidence of the site that's adjoining the small shop. That will always remain. So the site needs to be developed, although we can't say that ourselves, but it needs to be developed. And that's the responsibility of the developer to mix with the next site. And if he can't develop, that's not something we can really force on. But I don't feel that when we, as our housing department, has actually made a recommendation of 3 bedrooms, and then when it comes to the formula to make it more viable, it's which unit is being, or which home has been dropped, the 2-bedroom, 4-people home. So to make it from 96 to 95. On that basis, I will not be supporting this application tonight, and I will be voting against.
Councillor Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I'm slightly torn on this because it's a site that obviously needs development, and I don't believe there's any heritage there that we need to keep, and in a sense welcome the process. But this is a very, very tall building outside a zone of tall buildings. It may create a tendency to tall buildings, and I don't believe it's offering enough good quality family accommodation. In fact, any at all. I'm inclined to vote against this development.
Who's next? Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thank you for presentations and representations from Mr. Forbes and halcyon days of Southall, and Mr. Alawalia's less halcyon days when his family came here. So, there's places have history, but we've had the conversation about whether that building should exist. Not us, but it's happened previously, and it's deemed that it shouldn't remain. So it's mute about what's there now. Yeah, I mean, it's astonishing to think what can be done with that lower part of the building. The illustrations, quite remarkable given we were stood there and what we saw. I agree with Councillor Wall that an active area becomes, it's no good to people that want to cause too much antisocial behaviour, because it's too hard for them to do it. So I look forward to that improving. We need to get away from this conversation about parking. It's very, very close to a newly, we may see it as residents living in the area who drive around the area, but the people coming here will be people that will be relying and taking the opportunity to benefit from the Elizabeth line, and better buses and access to Heathrow, to the new quality industrial units that are coming up as part of the reset of Southall. Yeah, and that sort of, for me, negates what Councillor Anand says about the family homes. We have these formulas that mean that very close to a station, close to certain industry and certain employment opportunities, family homes are not what's required. What's required is what's been presented to us. I agree with Councillor Coley, and I'm sure the developer must have relationships with the shop next door. I'm sure he knows what he could do and what can be done. And if he can do anything, power to your elbow, because it does stick out like a sore thumb. I would be minded to vote for this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you. About the 3-bedroom, about the absence of 3-bedroom properties, I do still find that I'm really quite unhappy about that, because I know we're saying that other developments nearby have 3-bedroom properties, but we tend to not have developments which have a lot of 3-bedroom properties when families do need somewhere to live. This is an area south of deprivation. There are going to be a lot of families on the list who do need somewhere to live. I mean, it does feel like it's really just pushing me here on like what I'm supposed to accept. it just mentions there in the report, I think it's on page 14, that you've got 2-bedroom properties there that are suitable for 3 people. It just looks like, when you read later in the report, it just looks like they've thrown in a few extra square meters just to make 1 or 2 of those units okay for 4 people. And it just like, well, it's not really making any effort here to actually make it okay for people who may need slightly larger places to live. There's also mentioned in there about the lack of amenity space as well, which is just which I'm not really too impressed by. Actually just looking at the building itself, it does actually look like there is capacity in there to have somewhere nice and spread out, somewhere decent for people to live, and it isn't happening. It's just a case of just trying to have a smaller property in there for 1-bedroom property or 2-bedroom property. It doesn't actually seem like they're really making an effort there to make it just somewhere nice for people who actually need somewhere to live around there. And also the other thing that made me a little bit unhappy was seeing the photograph on page 26, just trying to illustrate what it's going to look like in real life in the street. That looked nothing like Southall to me. I mean, it didn't look anything like Southall at any time, day or night. And so it just felt as if maybe the whole thought process behind it, it just hadn't really taken into consideration what the area really is, what the area really needs. And so I was quite unhappy about that. And at the moment, I'm just still kind of dithering as to whether or not to even abstain on this one, because I'm not entirely sure, but thank you.
Councillor Coley.
Okay, I'm actually minded to support this application. Now, the site as it stands isn't very good in many aspects. Obviously, because of the improvement in public realm, it's a derelict site. I think the building is a reasonably good design. I am concerned that there are no 3-bedroom properties. I do agree with Councillor Anand that we should have had some 3-bedroom properties, and I believe that in future we need to look into this as to why this is happening. And do we need 3-bedroom family properties near a station? Well, the answer to that is yes, we do, because there are many families who cannot afford to keep a car, and it is important. And I think our officers should be minded about that fact. But overall, when you balance on what they are providing compared to what is already there, given the constraints within the site, I think that we should look at granting this application. Thank you.
Okay, so.
Chair, can I just make it clear?
Councillor Bush still indicated.
Yeah, cheers, thank you, Chair. Without stating the obvious, it's a very small site. There's not really that much you can do with it. And to be honest, I have no objections to the development other than, and this is probably, you'll probably predict this, is the housing affordability mix. And though I feel that shared ownership has its place in the housing affordability mix, I think the share in this development is too high. So on that basis, I'll be voting against the application.
Right, okay, let me sum up some of the objections and how they, I'm trying to work out how they stack out in planning terms. So it's the affordability levels are not to the liking. The affordability is there in terms of genuine affordability. And we're saying, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'll just try to sum it up. That, okay, in itself is tenuous, but okay. We have not enough family housing. Families.
Chair, I want to make it clear. It's not about family housing that I'm objecting to.
No,
it's about the tall buildings.
Councillor Gantz, not enough family housing was, I think, a quote that you mentioned. So families come in all shapes and sizes these days. Families come in 1 parent, 1 child, 1 parent, 2 children, 2 parents, 2 children. All of those would be accommodated in this building. All of those are families. So to say that there's no family housing is inaccurate in this sense. So I'm worried that if that's the reason for refusing, it's a worrying refusal. but Councillor Praveen and come in now.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make it more clear that I'm not against it because of the housing mix as much as I am going against our tall buildings policy.
The tall building statement that we had. Okay. Right. Anyone else for anything else? Because I'm going to go to the vote because and I'm just wary of if we do turn this, if the committee had minded to turn it down, I need some reasons for that. And I need to be clear on those reasons. No, I know what you just said. I heard what you just said.
Can we go for a
Is that-
deferral
Can you
before we
what?
go for a vote?
Pardon?
Can we go for a deferral? Give the opportunity to the developer to come back.
Are you proposing a
Yes,
deferral?
yes.
For what reason?
So that I don't refuse, I can give them an opportunity to come back.
What?
To revise the height and be in line with our tall buildings statement.
That's not going to, it's not going
If
to,
not, then I'm refusing.
that's not going to work, is it? But
Okay.
you've asked for a referral, so I have to ask the committee, are they minded to refer this one? So all those in favour of referral, please show. All those against, please show. So right, we're going to decide it tonight. Right, okay. Right, now I'm going to go to the substantive vote. So all those in favour of this development. Pardon? No, don't worry about that. We've gone past that bit. So all those in favour of this development, please show. How many? 7. Right. Okay. Me. Okay, all those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. You got that? Yeah. Abstentions? Councillor Rice. Okay, right. So, Councillor, hand your mic, please. Okay, so that application is passed, and we'll move on to the next one. Right, Joel, this is yours, isn't it? We have no speakers on Portrush, and bearing in mind the time of the evening, can you be as quick as possible, please? Thank you.
I certainly can. So on the agenda this evening is items 2 and 3, which is both a non-material amendment to the outline planning permission on this site and the approval of reserve matters. Members should be advised the reserve matters details are dependent on the approval of the non-material amendment, as the reserve matters relate to the outline as amended. The outline permission included approved parameters to set out the allowable building massing. The proposal would slightly amend these to account for non-material amendments to the approved parameters to accommodate the proposed building. The first image shown on your screen shows proposal against the approved parameters, effectively showing the non-material amendment proposed. The second image shows the proposal against the amended massing parameters sought as part of this application. The change is considered by council officers to be a non-material amendment in accordance with our protocol for non-material amendments and section 96A of the Town and Country Planning Act. The officer recommendation is therefore to approve the non-material amendment. The reserve matters application relates to the details required by conditions 6 and 7 of the original outline permission. This slide shows what details were requested at each of the conditions. Members are reminded that only matters that are up for consideration this evening are those that have been defined by condition 6 of the outline planning permission. The outline planning commission stated the required financial obligations would be determined and agreed at reserve matters stage. These have been agreed and outlined within the briefing note. This is a 100% affordable housing scheme that is being delivered by Ealing Council. The memorandum of agreement for the outline planning commission stated the affordable housing provision needed to deliver a minimum of 84 dwellings or 270 habitable rooms as London affordable rent or social rent. The scheme delivers an increase of it from up to 104 units in the affordable rent category, which equates to 338 habitable rooms. The design of the proposal has followed design specification of the outline planning commission in terms of the scale, footprint, massing and strategy. The design includes a number of areas of articulation and variations in the facade. Textural quality is inbuilt into the design with a series of cast concrete elements such as columns, sills, cornices and lintels to complement the surrounding brickwork. Subtle variations in brick colour through the scheme would add visual interest to the development. Landscaping is considered to be high quality, providing opportunities for both improvement to the public realm. The hard landscaping proposals incorporate a soft palette that assists in wayfinding and used in a way to delineate the public realms. Soft landscaping proposal involve a substantial increase in the number of trees on the site, with children's play space proposals integrated into the landscape. The site layout represents a logical placement of the three buildings within the site that ensures that separate means of access for commercial and residential areas are clearly defined within the street scene. The layout also falls within parameter plans as approved as part of the outline planning commission and the subsequent non-material amendments being assessed concurrently. The quality of the residential accommodation proposed within the scheme would provide for compliant internal living areas, private amenity spaces as well in the form of balconies. The proposed flats would receive good amounts of natural light and natural ventilation. As a summary, everything that is proposed is within the agreed parameter of the outline planning commission. It's considered that the proposed development meets all relevant policy. Council officers are satisfied the proposal is acceptable in terms of the required reserve matters being appearance, means of access, landscaping, layout and scale, and is recommended that both applications be approved. Was that quick enough?
That was very quick. Thank you very much. And I think the committee appreciate that. So we have to do, questions. Councillor Rice.
Thank you. Can I just ask out of a matter of interest, because I'm sure I've been involved in some casework of a resident on the Golf Links estate. You had to actually move out of Ealing because the home wasn't actually suitable for his disabled children. And it was impossible for him to find somewhere, apart from what you said, in Ealing. So are we actually taking the opportunity here to actually make somewhere in the estate a little bit more accessible for disabled people? I know we've got disabled parking, but do we actually know by any chance? I know this might not be relevant to this report exactly, but about what is there available for people with disabilities who might need that extra bit of help and care.
Any other questions? Right, Joel, have you got that?
Yes, the report does mention it, but I'll just sort of reiterate it that effectively the proposal provides a compliant amount of M42 units, which are wheelchair accessible units. Okay, right. No more questions. Open for debate. Anyone would like to contribute to this debate? You can see that the committee are wilting in front of me. If there is no one burning to have a debate, we'll go straight to the votes. There's two votes, one on the material. So on the non-material amendment, which is the application 1 in front of you. So we've got to go through that one first. So that's the slight change on that block that, as you saw the picture earlier, I think. So all those in favour of that, let me get this right, for the application for the non-material amendment, please show. I think that's unanimous. Right, okay, thank you. I'll just go through any against, any abstentions. Right, that makes it right. Okay, so now on to application 2, the application for the approval of reserve matters in front of you. Right, all those in favour, please show. Again, right, all those against, just boxing this off. Any abstentions? Right, that makes the numbers correct. Right, okay. Thank you very much, committee. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. Oh, and by the way, Katie is now leaving us for maternity leave. So thank you very much for all your over the years. And yeah, we'll see you back at some point. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Wish you very best of luck. Right, thank you very much, everyone.